nor their insurance. And then, depending on the drug, we're doing a neuropathy study now involves a monthly injection, subcutaneous injection. Patients will come in monthly for that. They'll have to keep a diary. Sometimes these diaries are actually a small notebook, and sometimes they're an electronic diary where they're given a little device, looks like a cell phone, and they have to enter data into that. Sometimes they have to call a centralized number like an 800 number and answer questions on the phone just by touching the keypad. And this is how the information about how the drug is doing is gathered so that one can later on interpret it and see whether it was really successful.
That's great. That's very high tech. I'm really enjoying hearing that. And so, and they don't have to come in weekly. It sounds like they're only coming in a monthly?
No, weekly. No, it would be unusual. No, some of the studies may be monthly. It depends. Each protocol is different and has very different requirements. Some of the studies, they need to have nerve testing and different types of nerve testing that we do in the office. And remember, we're doing studies for Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis and headache disorders, in addition to neuropathy studies. So each one has its own protocol. They may need MRI scans. They may need what are called PET scans and evaluations by other specialists as well. That's all part of the protocol.
Wow, you're doing so many studies. And so the people who are coming in for Alzheimer's studies, are they people who are in early phase of Alzheimer's? Are people bringing them in, the caregivers?
It depends on the study we're doing. We're doing studies for early-stage Alzheimer's, plus we're doing studies for late-stage Alzheimer's. So each one is different, and the requirements to qualify for the study are different. We're looking at new antibodies that affect the amyloid, which is this abnormal protein that settles in the brain in Alzheimer's patients. So we're looking at ways of getting rid of that abnormal protein in the hope that it will improve the patient's memory and cognition. We're doing Parkinson's studies, testing a new drug that's not yet on the market that hopefully is going to help patients with advanced Parkinson's disease who have a lot of extra involuntary movements and a lot of freezing. A lot of patients with Parkinson's will freeze when they're walking. They just can't move, and we're testing a new drug for that. We're looking at another drug for more mild symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So there's a lot going on.
This has nothing to do.
I should add, in multiple sclerosis also we have several trials testing oral medications. Right now all the drugs for multiple sclerosis are injectable medications where the patients have to inject themselves either daily or every other day or 3 times a week, and we're looking at several pills, which is much easier for the patient than injecting themselves.
And are these studies going on simultaneously? In other words, you may be 2 months into one and 8 months into another, or 1 week into one, and you have a lot of them coming out of your office.
Yes, we've got lots of studies. Sure, they're all
fantastic.
Going on.
I guess we should do
staff that obviously is trained to deal with these problems.
Fantastic. That really,
right.
I'm more impressed than ever now. So
obviously, only a patient can be only on one study at a time. So that's
right. Oh, that's interesting. Even if they have 2 of the diseases you're studying, they can only be on one at a time.
Absolutely.
That's right, because the other might counteract what you're discovering, right?
Well, yeah, you wouldn't know because, remember, these are double-blinded, placebo-controlled trials, so we have to be very strict about that. In fact, if somebody's in a trial and the trial is completed, they have to wait at least 30 days before they can even consider entering into another trial.
My goodness, this is even more interesting than I'd imagine. I think maybe what we ought to do is, maybe in our next issue after August, is to list all the possible studies that people could be interested in. I mean, it's amazing. I'm sure that. How long have you been doing the clinical studies?
The first trial I did was in 1985, so that's 25 years ago.
You can't be. You sure don't look that old.
Right. Well, I've been in practice for 30 years, so.
Have you really? And how did you know you wanted to be a neurologist of all the different specialties? What triggered that for you?
Well, because I thought what could be more interesting than the brain, and that's what we're dealing with here,
Yeah, I guess so. That is true, the brain. And we're finding out from the time you first studied and got your degree, the brain and what people know about the brain, hasn't it probably been the most information on any body part?
Well, when I first started in neurology, the joke was amongst medical students that why do you want to go into neurology? Because you can't do anything for anybody. But the truth is that there's plenty that can be done. There have been tremendous advances in epilepsy and stroke, in migraine, in Parkinson's disease, in Alzheimer's disease. Huge, discoveries over these years. Absolutely.
Well, in a simple term, doesn't the brain control everything?
Essentially. Right, that's the hard drive.
That's the hard drive. That's good.
Right.
The brain controls everything, and then that's right. So when people have problems, as you said, to the very bottom of their feet, it could be emanating from the nerves, which all emanate from the brain.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's a pretty big, the brain is so small compared, I guess, to so many of the other organs, but is the brain an organ?
The brain, it can be considered, yeah.
Is an organ? Well, I know it's been very complicated for a lot of people, but you do make it sound easy, and there's a lot of confidence that you exude when you talk about this. So I think that's what people need. I'm sure when they're in pain and they don't know where to turn and they go see you, they feel better. You have a very nice way, and it makes people feel good that there's hope, and that's probably why the clinical studies are so important, because you sound like, if you've been doing this so long, there are drugs today on the market that you can put your, stamp of approval and say, yes, I was part of that.
Right.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, but anything in particular that we would know?
Well, the drugs that we're testing, we did studies. You may have heard of Aricept and Namenda for Alzheimer's.
Did you? Aricept was something you worked on?
Yeah, sure. And
no
Namenda
kidding.
As well, and Namenda as well.
Wow.
Razodine is another drug that's on the market. Exelon, you may have heard of Exelon for Alzheimer's disease. We did all these studies, absolutely. And for migraine, Imitrex, we did the very first Imitrex studies in the late 80s. So there's a lot of drugs that are on the market that we were involved with, sure.
Well, you must feel very good about that, because a lot of times they're wonderful doctors, but there's nothing they can, other than their patients, that they can really say, well, I've done this and that. But you are doing things that can affect people all over the world once you find something. So, and I guess it takes a long time. The pharmaceutical companies have to go through a lot of clinical studies before the FDA actually approves it, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
That's why
a lot of studies fail.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we do these, to find the ones that are successful.
And so the ones that we just talked about with Alzheimer's and other illnesses like that, with Parkinson's, and that's what I guess our biggest worry, all of us, of course, is Alzheimer's. We know so many people now that seem to get Alzheimer's. Do you feel and this it's not, I'm going to hold you to this, but people say that after 85 years of age, it's a very high percentage of people who get Alzheimer's. Do you believe that?
Well, it says that 50%, after the age of 85 will have cognitive difficulties. Yes.
You do?
Absolutely, yeah.
And is there something people can do about that in order for that not to happen? Do you think that
Well, unfortunately, there's nothing available to protect one from Alzheimer's disease, and not at this point, but we're working on it.
That's great. I just want everyone to know that very, very important interview with Dr. Richard Singer, who is a board-certified neurologist with neurology clinical research in Sunrise. If you would like an appointment, if you want to talk to someone and you'd like to get into be a participant in one of the clinical studies that they do, the number is 954-475-8171. Remember, this is Pencil Talk Radio. Get your pencils out, write the number down. If it isn't for you, it might be a friend or someone that you could really do a great service for. The phone number is 954-475-8171, and their website is neuroresearch.net, neuroresearch.net. And if you need a neurologist, whether you want to do a study or not, for instance, if people tell you you're having memory loss and you can't remember this, you can't remember that, I'm sure you do studies on that, don't you, Dr. Singer?
Absolutely.
Individual, I don't mean studies. You do a testing.
Yes, of course. Uh-huh.
Right, so that somebody you can tell pretty quickly if that's true or if it's just something that they're not concentrating, or they're not eating right, or they're on wrong medication. Well, for now, we're going to say goodbye, but I have to tell you it's been a very informative interview. I thank you again and look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr.